Hi students, this is your week 2 update. Just a reminder that all assignments for week 2 are due by the end of the day on Saturday, that's tomorrow. And in this video, I'm going to give you a quick review of the past week, week 2, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview as to what we'll be looking at in week 3. First of all, to week 2, I'll talk a little bit about discussions and journals. First of all, when it comes to journals, this is more procedural than anything else. Don't comment on the journals after you've posted them. And this is not because I don't want to continue the conversations at all, but just because once I've commented and submitted your grade for the journal, it's actually quite difficult for me to gain access to access the journal again, and there isn't a way for me to get a notification that you've commented on that journal again. So the best approach, it seems to me, is for you to post your journal entry. I may comment on it when I grade it, and we've had some really good reflections this week, so thank you very much for those. And then I'm really open to continuing those conversations. If you want to continue the conversation, that's fantastic by me. But it's going to be successful if we do it through email rather than continuing to comment on the journal entry. So just send me an email, say, hey, really want to keep this conversation going, and then we'll continue. And that'll be great, but that'll just be effective. Whereas if you're commenting on the journals, I may not see those comments. When it comes to the discussion boards, again, a reminder to respond to make your initial post early in the week. It's Friday morning now, and these are due on Saturday at the end of the day. So if you haven't made your initial post by now, and a number of you haven't, then you're running late and you're losing points from your grade. So make sure you're posting at least by Thursday for the first time. Some people have been unsure where to find the questions. The questions are in the Reading the American Past source book, not the American Narrative History textbook. So the Narrative History textbook is for reading along with the videos and the PowerPoints. The source book, Reading the American Past, that's for our discussion boards. So the sources that you want to read are going to be in there, and you'll find there are two different types of questions. So we have a chapter on pre-Columbian America, and it's going source, questions, source, questions, source, questions. And then at the end of the chapter, there's a whole bunch of questions that are called comparative questions that kind of bring in all the text from that chapter. We are not doing the comparative questions because we are not reading all the sources in the chapter. So you're just answering questions that are directly following the source that you have been assigned to read. So, trying to think. If it's Schertz reading and sources, and then Manigault reading and sources, and then Andrew Johnson reading and sources, then you're just looking at the questions. Sorry, the questions that come after the Schertz reading, the questions that come after the Manigault reading. I hope that's clear. But if anyone's unsure, just let me know. Some people have been having issues with the textbook. The textbooks haven't arrived yet. My suggestion is that you contact the library at ENMU. That we were told as faculty, I don't know if this is the case in practice, but hopefully it is, that because the library couldn't loan you textbooks on reserve for you to use, that was considered too many people handling the same book. They will scan relevant chapters for you. Now, don't use this to abuse the goodwill of the library and have them scan every chapter for you and avoid buying the book. But if you are waiting for your book, that would be my advice. To contact the library, ask them to scan the pages that you need. But if that doesn't work, then just let me know and we'll figure something else out. So I hope that solves any questions about access. When it comes to the discussions, your discussion assignments are based on 3 components: your initial post, and then the 2 comments that you make after that. If I see that you've made your initial post and your 2 comments and it's really good and it's a 10 out of 10, then I'm going to grade it and submit the grade. That helps me to keep on top of the grading and get you your grades back more quickly. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep responding. to the discussion, please do so. It just means that the grade has been submitted. That being said, if I see you've made your initial post and you've made your 2 required comments and it's not 10 out of 10 work, then I'm not going to grade it until the deadline. I'm going to give you until the deadline to do 10 out of 10 work. So if you've made your initial post and your 2 required comments and it's been a couple of days and you haven't seen the grade come through, that's a good sign that you should go back and have another look and see if maybe you need to proofread your initial post a little better. You need to make your comments a little more thorough in order to gain full credit. So what are the takeaways from this? Firstly, you want to make these posts early. That'll give you an idea whether you're doing 10 out of 10 work. And I always say to people, do an extra comment. If you're unsure whether your comments are really 10 out of 10, do a 3rd one. Give yourself some insurance. Okay, when it comes to the netiquette, as people like to call it, of responding and making comments, this is kind of the most difficult thing to work out. So just a couple of points here. In general, we're trying to build a conversation in these discussions. It's not just kind of supposed to be someone makes a comment and it's sort of like a tennis match. Someone makes a comment and someone responds to the comment and hits the ball out. We want it to be a rally where it's going backwards and forwards. Other people are getting involved. It becomes more like a volleyball circle where the ball's being moved around and everyone's contributing. So make sure that your comments really build the conversation, and especially that they refer back to the text. Now, we're in an online format where it's often very difficult to convey emotion, and so it's easy for people to feel attacked. I don't think any of you are going to attack someone else on a history posting in your US History 2 class. None of you have shown in the couple of weeks that I've been teaching you that you behave like that. So good for you. And there's a world of difference between attacking someone and disagreeing with someone. I think it's great when you feel comfortable saying, I disagree, and you can say that, and you can say that without being personally critical of the other person. So I think it is a fine and good practice to compliment the person whose thread you want to comment on. There must have been something there that was interesting to you that you picked their thread. So something like, good question, good comments, good post, I agree, I disagree, made me think about this. I think that's a great way to start your comment. But if most of your comment is talking about the other person's post, telling them that it was succinct or telling them that it was helpful, that's not really building the conversation. That's kind of putting a period on the conversation. You know, we want like a semicolon or a comma that's going to keep it going. I thought this was a really interesting post. I agree because, and then take it to another part of the text. Bring in another part of the text. And that way we keep building the conversation. So make sure that your comments are continuing to refer back to the text and building the conversation that way. The other way that it's important to build a conversation is by responding to questions. I'm probably the one who asks the most questions, but I'm not the only one who asks questions. If you see that the topic of the thread that you want to comment on, the last person to post on that asked a question, it is polite and good manners that you acknowledge and respond to that question, even if it's only briefly. So let's say there's the reading by Schutz and the reading by Manigault, and someone has made a post in which they answered a question from each. And then a bunch of people have been on the thread. They've been talking about the Manigault reading. Plantation owner comes in contact with his former slaves again and his former plantation. This is really interesting, this, that, and the other. And the last person there has asked a question. Do you think Manigault felt like this when he saw his plantation again? If you want to comment on this thread and you want to say something about Manigault, you need to acknowledge that question, even if it's only briefly, even if it's to say, that's a good question. I don't know. This is my thought, but I hadn't really thought about that before. so that someone answers the question, and that question is kept live within the conversation for someone else to answer. If you just come kind of bulldozing in and ignore that question, then whoever asked that question, that question doesn't get answered. And it looks like you're not having a proper conversation with all the people who are commenting. It looks as though you just want to get your comment in and get out of there, and you're not really interested in interacting with other people. So that's not what we're looking for. So make sure that your comments are building the conversation. Make sure you're acknowledging questions in the thread. In that example, if you want to make a comment on the shirts reading and the last person to comment about the shirts reading didn't ask a question, go right for it. No problem there at all. Just make sure you're not ignoring the questions that people have asked beforehand. Okay, that's the week in review. Now the week in preview, the week that's coming up ahead. We're going to talk about the industrial era. We're going to talk about the rise of big business and industries in the United States. This is a really interesting and relevant topic today, especially because now we have really huge companies again. We had this period in the 19th century when we had really big companies, or at least big companies for the time. And now we're moving to a point where we have companies like Amazon, Walmart, and Google that are massive and have huge influence. And so what this topic of the industrial era is really relevant, and it fits really well into the themes of our class: the growth of the United States, the growth of these huge American industries and their emergence, and the government response. How is the government supposed to respond to these big businesses that we see emerging? So I think this is a really cool and relevant topic, and I hope you find it interesting. We have a slightly busier week this week because you have an essay that's due, a 5-paragraph essay that's due. So there are 6 questions. You have to pick one of them. You have to write a 5-paragraph essay in response to that. If you are anyone in this class, you should do at least some of the steps that I'm about to outline. If you're someone who finds writing difficult, you should definitely do the steps that I'm about to outline. Firstly, you should proofread your work before you submit it. Secondly, you should ask a friend or a relative to proofread your work before you submit it. Thirdly, you should use the Eastern New Mexico Writing Center. Eastern New Mexico University is one of a relatively few universities that provides the same writing support for online students as they do for face-to-face students. Most people probably think that the Writing Center is shut down for the semester, but no, it's available. It's a tool that the university pays for, that your tuition pays for, so that you can use it and that you can be successful. So please take advantage of that. This is just the sort of assignment that you should send to the Writing Center. And then come talk to me. I'm more than happy to look at your drafts before you submit them. I know what an A grade on this assignment looks like better than anyone else. And so don't hesitate to take advantage of these resources. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you're looking forward to studying the industrial era. I hope the course is going well for you so far, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.